own eyes and your own experience. It's
Yeah.
a good habit, but then you've got to somehow bring that together with the idea of, averages and what it's
And
most
also,
likely over thousands of people.
Yeah, and what does it mean to say that you have a 90% reduction in your risk of mortality from getting a vaccine? You have to sort
I
of
want
imagine.
the fifth. I'm waiting for the fifth.
You have to
I'll take the
imagine.
fifth.
You have to imagine alternate
That's the new
parallel
version
universes.
of I'll take the fifth. No,
What's on
Paddy,
the show?
Paddy can get it in about a week's time.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Because I've missed out because I'm too young.
Oh,
Josh,
you're too sprightly.
I've been too young to get the fifth.
Now you're allowed.
But now I'm allowed.
Well, there you go.
Are you
going to get the same one? That was another thing that people were
No,
asking Peter.
I think you get the real tooled up one, which is good for the latest.
Bivalent thingy.
That was the one.
There you go.
I'll have one.
I'll
Roll
have
up
one
your sleeves.
I'll have one of those.
We're going to talk about lots of things. Tommy Dean will be on in the first half hour to talk about Super Bowl, which of course is
Fantastic.
ended with a victory to the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk about the Aussies who were involved, Rihanna, of course, and her big revelations and all that sort of stuff. That'll be in the first half hour. Also in the first half hour, we're going to talk about, tomorrow's not only Valentine's Day, it's Library Lovers Day. We're going to talk about libraries and their significance in people's lives.
Fabulous. Can't wait to hear it. That's Drive with Richard Glover. Up after the news headlines. Have a wonderful evening. I'll see you tomorrow.
G'day, this is Josh Zepps, the host of Afternoons with Josh Zepps, obviously. And you know what's on this Sunday? It's Mardi Gras Fair Day, and I will be in the thick of it, broadcasting into the weekend's show from the fair, bringing you all the outdoor fun. Don't miss it, Sunday from 10 a.m. to midday with me, Josh Zepps, the host of Afternoons with Josh Zepps, live from Fair Day this Sunday.
Celebrate Sydney World Pride 2023.
ABC Radio Sydney.
Adam Story with an ABC News update. The opposition leader Peter Dutton has told federal parliament he regrets not attending the apology to the stolen generations. Today marks 15 years since the then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd made the apology, acknowledging successive governments had failed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Australians. The Department of Home Affairs Secretary has publicly apologised to the federal government over the lapse of Australia's offshore asylum seeker processing policy. Mike Pizzullo says the lapse was regrettable and significant and was caused by human error. The state opposition has accused the state government of running a scare campaign after the Treasurer claimed that the opposition's plan to remove the public sector wages cap would create a black hole in the budget. The government says Treasury analysis shows it would cost $8.6 billion over 4 years to increase public sector wages in line with inflation. Supporters of Kathleen Folbig say they're hopeful justice will be delivered as a second inquiry gets underway into her convictions for killing her 4 children. Major focus will be expert opinions about a rare gene mutation found in Kathleen Folbig and her 2 daughters, Sarah and Laura. Millions of people in New Zealand's North Island are being told to stay home as Cyclone Gabrielle brings gale force winds and heavy rain to the region. Wind gusts have reached 160 kilometres an hour in some parts of the upper north. The Pentagon says it acted out of an abundance of caution when shooting down a third unidentified object within a week. The object was shot down in Michigan, close to the Canadian border. Qatar says it's sending 10,000 cabins and caravans used during the Soccer World Cup to provide temporary housing for people who've lost their homes in the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. And in sport, the Kansas City Chiefs have won the American Super Bowl in Glendale, Arizona, beating the Philadelphia Eagles 38 points to 35. Cloudy with a chance of showers later tonight, cloudy tomorrow with a high chance of showers at top of 25. More news at 4.
You're listening to Drive with Richard Glover.
G'day, Rich Glover with you on ABC Radio Sydney. Today, 20 years in prison, but experts are lining up to say she's been unfairly found guilty of the Kathleen Folbig inquiry. Here's a whole new line of evidence today. Also today, the health push focused on chronic disease and the Monday Political Forum with Zali Steggall, Susan Templeman and Catherine Greiner. It's all ahead here on ABC Radio Sydney, on radio at 7:02am, on the ABC Listen app, on digital radio, on TV's Channel 25, and of course, online everywhere. Let's check the latest traffic.
ABC Radio Sydney traffic.
And Jeff Wallace is here from the Australian Traffic Network. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Richard. Smithfield, a boat trailer has detached itself from a car. The people are trying to put it back on again, but it's affecting southbound Cumberland Highway, Wood Park Road. Moore Park, broken down motorcycle for the ED tunnels. It's northbound at William Street off-ramp. Just coming through, I'm just looking at the camera for it, but there's a crash on Penningfields Road at Carlingford, near Carlingford Road, southbound down towards Marsden Road. Traffic is very heavy. And also Mount Victoria, broken down truck got him on camera. He's on the Victoria Pass, eastbound lane 1, climbing the hill on the bends. I'm Jeff Ollis from the Australian Traffic Network.
Jeff, thank you very much. Now, in Catelyn Moran's memoir, How to Be a Woman, she writes about the local library in her hometown. Her family are poor, her siblings numerous, the house is crowded. In the midst of this gloom, she writes, the cavalry finally arrives, over the hill, jangling its spurs and epaulets shining in the sun. My green library card. She's saved by the local library. Another writer, Jeanette Winterson, has a very similar scene in her memoir. She's been adopted into a fire and brimstone Pentecostal family with a tendency to paint their new little daughter, as the devil. And again, it's the local library to the rescue. By the time she becomes a young teenager, the local librarian suggests a reading course, English literature from A to Z. And luckily, this means she kicks off with Jane Austen, immediately creating a lifetime of reading and writing and joy. Tomorrow is not only Valentine's Day, it's also Library Lovers Day, a day to think about the library which created, for you, a love of books and reading. I wonder whether it was the local council-run library, or the library at primary school, the library of a neighbour or parent or a friend. Were you in the bush and had to visit the travelling library when it happened to be in town? Or maybe more recently, you've fallen in love with those street libraries where people pick up and drop off books for everyone to share. So what's your favourite library? Is it some grand building that you visited when overseas or in Australia? Was there a librarian who guided you in your local library? Was it a grand building or a tiny one? What was the library for you? 1300 222 702. It might have been a handful of books, just a handful. But you found within that handful something special. Again, 1300 222 702. John Vallance is the state librarian. I bet he's got some favourite libraries to join the discussion. And he's here with us on Drive. Hi, John.
Hi, Richard.
They save lives, don't they? I'm amazed by how often I'm reading a memoir of somebody, particularly somebody who's maybe grown up not in a bookish household, and they mention the role of the library.
No, it's all true, and everything you've said is true as well. People think that libraries are places you go to find stuff out, but that's a long way down the list of important things. Libraries are where you go to feel safe when you're lonely. Libraries are places where anyone can be accepted for who they are, as in Jeanette Winston. Libraries give you confidence. Libraries give you a sense of possibility. At the same time, they make you realise that you're only a tiny speck in the ocean of importance. Libraries have this universal appeal. It's just extraordinary.
I'm hoping people will ring up with some contrast. And I'm hoping that somebody's favourite library would be the library of, 5 books that they found at their aunt's place. But, there was enough in those 5 to set them off. And somebody else might talk about some, grand library they visited in Paris or London or somewhere like that, which has got, hundreds of thousands of books.
Or that miserable motel room you go to in regional New South Wales where always there's a Gideon's Bible in the drawer. That's still a library.
It's got good stories in there.
Absolutely. And, a room with no books is a coffin.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Okay. Books to furnish the room.
Exactly. The room of life.
As they say in Anthony Powell. John Vallance is here. We're talking about libraries and their role in your life. I wonder what the one was for you. 1300 222 702. Was it tiny? Was it small? Was it private? Was it public? Was, like with Jeanette Winterson, was there a librarian, a significant librarian? Maybe it was the school librarian who just pushed the crucial book that made the difference into your hands. Text us 0467 922 702 1300 222 702. Mention people like Caitlin and Jeanette, John, because they grew up in houses without books, so the council library became very important. That wasn't the case for you. You grew up in a household with lots of books.
Yeah, my parents met over books. They spent their life collecting huge numbers of books about everything. One of the reasons I didn't go to private school was because they spent all their money on books. Didn't do them any harm, I should say. But my life has been books from the cradle and probably to the grave.
What did you describe what that library was like and what the room was like?
Well, every room in the house was filled with books. My father used to read me bedtime stories every night. And now, late in life, I go through and I open these books and I can find all these bits and pieces, Christmas cards, letters that my mother wrote me on my birthday, bus tickets, all sorts of things. Books don't just have a life because of the text in them. Books have a life as repositories of people's lives themselves, because it's where you stick things that you don't have a home for.
Okay, now we come to the question. Obviously, it's all right to mark your spot with a bus ticket, but do you write in the book? See, if you own the book, not a library book, but if you own the book, I quite like writing in it myself, but other people think that's the worst thing you can do.
I was very prissy about this when I was young, and now I get bolder in my old age. I'm happy to write, but not with biro. I write with pencil.
That's much nicer.
And that's a good compromise. Because one of the interesting things about the people, books aren't just with you. They have a life after you die. Other people buy them and they stay in circulation. And so books develop a patina of other people's lives. And that makes them even more interesting.
Yeah, it's lovely to see the sentence that some previous reader has enjoyed so much they've underlined.
Exactly.
John Vallance is here at the State Library, and we're talking about the libraries that are important to you, whether it was a private library, an uncle, a friend, a parent. Did you grow up in a household full of books? Did you have that lovely thing where your eyes scan the shelves, particularly as a teenager, looking for the one that might be a little bit sexy? Were you that child? 1300 222 702. And have you used the modern form of library, which I don't know where the idea comes from. I don't know if it's an American imported idea or an English imported idea, but it's now everywhere. These little kind of street libraries where someone set up a little house, really, a little cubby house often with a little tin roof, and people come and leave their books that they don't want anymore in the library, and other people come along and pick them out. It's one of the most lovely new traditions. Have you enjoyed that? 1300 222 702. John is with us, so is Meredith. Hi, Meredith.
Hello.
Yeah, the libraries, the great libraries in your life.
Yeah, I was just saying that my mother used to volunteer at the little tiny library at the School of Arts building in Glenbrook in the Blue Mountains. I think it was maybe one day a week or something. And the library was about as big as a cupboard, and it just had this little desk at the end, and she would, just volunteer as a librarian there. And I just remember as a kid going in there, and there was just all these little musty books, and but she was an avid book reader herself, and I think it was just her little thing. So,
and what a lovely thing if you're an avid book reader, to be able to recommend to all your neighbours, you'll like this one.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And the School of Arts building is still there. It's now the cinema at Glenbrook, but it was in the days before it was, I think it was sort of just the hall, and it was just this little alcove sort of room off to the side, and that was the library.
That's fantastic, isn't it? And I've heard too, I've never really seen them in action, but of travelling libraries, which used to go around in a bus to country towns, and maybe you can tell me a bit more about them. 1300 222 702. I mean, the other thing I've got a really strong memory of from childhood, and I don't think this exists at all anymore, but I really remember in the local suburban shops, there was a kind of run-for-profit kind of library. It was a normal shop, and it had lots of detective novels and that sort of stuff in it. And I remember going in with my mother and her taking out 2 books, and she'd pay, I can't remember, but a few dollars. And I remember being allowed to borrow my first book from this commercial library, and it was the first time I'd really read an adult book. It was Patrick Dennis's Auntie Mame, of all things, and it was an absolute step up from the Enid Blyton and Arthur Ransom that I've been reading, and it was also a comic novel, and I love that. And I always think that it kind of made a big difference to me. This one thing from a kind of commercial library, I don't think I think they're really forgotten in memory, those sort of libraries. But again, you might be able to help me. 1300 222 702. Kate is here from Hunters Hill. Hi, Kate. Yeah, Kate, this is a story about Katoomba.
Yes, well, I grew up in Katoomba for my primary years, and the library was fantastic in Katoomba's main street, as I remember. It's a long time ago now.
Yeah.
And the librarian was absolutely fantastic, and she even got to keeping books that were the new ones and saying, here's another one for you, here's another one for you. And always felt that eventually I'd read everything in the children's section, because I left there at the end of Katoomba at the end of 6th class, so I was only a primary school child. And but it was always a big joy, and all the wonderful books, and then she'd even go searching in the adult section for something that was suitable by the time I was 12.
And that's fun, isn't it? That moment, I was just mentioning my little experience with Patrick Denson. It's great, that moment when you move on to the adult books, isn't it?
Oh, yes. And I can remember one night I wanted to listen to some radio serial that my father thought wasn't appropriate for a child my age to read. And my mother piping up, you let her read just about anything she wants. Why can't she listen to... I can't remember what the radio play was, but...
fair point.
Yes.
Exactly, a fair point from her. Hey, Kate, thanks so much. Here's Ross in Wahroonga. Hi, Ross.
Oh, hi, Richard.
Yeah, libraries.
Yes, I was libraries in England last year, and I was walking through a number of different villages on a walk through parts of England, and they're red telephone boxes that have been converted to store books, and people can open the red door to the telephone box and borrow books. And,
isn't it a lovely little sort of retro idea?
Yeah.
Okay, the red phone box as library in London. Ross, thank you very much. This is on the text from Louise. The library at Armidale High School became a refuge at lunchtime. The bullies couldn't find me there. Only recently did I acknowledge that the books I read that year were from Leon Uris and the Holocaust. My suffering wasn't in that scale. That's from Louise. Now, that's a good point, actually, John, because you mentioned this idea that of one of the things about reading is that you are a microcosm. It takes you into somebody else's troubles, and that's kind of what Louise is saying. I think that sometimes when you're a teenager, the world feels full of you feel at the centre of all this sort of storm and drama, and then you read a book and you realise that there are other bigger storms in the world.
No, it's very true. And when I said that libraries are safe spaces, it wasn't just a glib statement. It is actually true. And it's where you go in and you realise that you're part of something bigger. People have suffered more than you have, and you really aren't alone.
Yeah, the ego, it's an ego-shrinking experience in a good way.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you remember in your parents' library whether the sort of adult books that you found first up?
Oh, gosh, yes. Yeah. I remember my first public library was the Linfield Library up on the Pacific Highway, and it's still there in exactly the same building now that it was. And I remember I graduated from Willard Price's African Adventures to a wonderful book called Fun with Explosives.
Well, they're not going to sell, they're not going to hire that out now.
I don't think you get that at the Linfield Public Library anymore. But I can remember all those transitions. I can remember seeing at the top of one of my father's shelves a book called Sexual Life in Greece and Rome. And when I was tall enough to reach it, my disappointment was immense.
I love the idea of willing yourself to become taller, so
I could read this book.
So you could get that. This is from Craig. Gosford Library has a mobile service still where they come to Gosford train station during the commute, and you can borrow books. That's a good idea. From Belinda, my mum took us to the Staunton Library in North Sydney after school in the early 1970s. I used to lose myself in the world of Asterix, and I'm sure that's how I learned to read. I loved it. The smell of books, the quiet, and the discovery of a new book and a new world. Isn't that lovely? George is here from North Sydney. Hi, George.
G'day, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, libraries.
So in the early 70s, I was a junior member of the Sydney Rock Climbing Club, and they used to camp overnight in these overhangs dotted through the Blue Mountains. You never had to worry about where you're going to sleep if you knew the caves. And someone had furnished one particularly nice cave at a place called Mount Boyce with a grill, a billy, and along a shelf in the top of the cave, a series of the trashy old science fiction magazines, the amazing stories and the science fiction horror stories from the 50s and 60s. And they stood there for many years until, in a feat of engineering excellence, the railway department managed to bury the library and the cave in a mudslide.
But that is the most beautiful, exotic library, isn't it?
It was great. Have a cup of tea and look at the snow falling outside the overhang and go rock climbing. And
lose yourself in some sci-fi adventure. Hey, George, thank you very much. In the ADF, the Australian Defence Force, says Mac, I had to travel a lot. My small rotating collection of books on the go, swapped from home, made each bleak defence accommodation space seem homely. Even a bunk on a ship. My own library experience growing up is most memorable because of the books on tape of Spike Milligan's war memoirs, The Goons on Vinyl, etc. That's from Mac. I mean, that's a very moving idea, isn't it? The idea, because, if you're being moved around by the Defence Force all the time, you can't carry much, but he's obviously making room in his kit for a few books. That's, going to be privileged over over other things like a spare blanket or something. 1300 222 702. Katoomba is an amazing library now with a spectacular view across the mountains, says one of our texters. What are your memories? Lucy from Barara brings up something. She says, I have fond memories of filling up my special library book bag. Now, I'd forgotten about that, the book bag, which was often hand-stitched at home, and you'd have to turn up to the library with the book bag. 1300 222 702. John Valance is with us, the State Librarian. We're going to talk to Tommy Dean in a moment about the NFL. Of course, it's now over with victory going to the Kansas City Chiefs. But David is here on the line. Hi, David.
Good afternoon, Richard.
Yeah, libraries.
Yeah, we just got back from a big road trip up to northern Queensland, and it's a very small town. We obviously had to stop in and use the public toilet. Outside the public toilet was a cabinet full of books, which more or less the sign read, please feel free to take a book, but please put a book in its place.
Yeah.
So we went on our 3-week journey, and then my wife read the book on the way back. She then placed the book back in the same cabinet. So
it's a lovely idea. I don't know where it came from, but it seemed to suddenly sprout sort of, 5 years ago or something.
Yeah, well, that was the first time I'd run into it, so it was sort of a pleasant surprise for my wife. I was doing all the driving, so I couldn't read, but, my wife enjoyed the journey after that.
Yeah, well, whoever thought that up? It's a good idea, the little street library. William says we also had one of those commercial libraries in Pennant Hill shops where I was able to arm myself with a good selection to take to hospital when I had my appendix removed in 1967. I'm not sure, though, if Russell Braddon's The Year of the Angry Rabbit would be considered suitable reading for a 13-year-old, but it was great fun, says William. Well, that's right. John, do you remember those commercial libraries? Because I just remembered when I was thinking about this today, the idea of, in the high street there'd actually be a commercial library. But I remember it, and someone else is saying there was one at Pennant Hills as well.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I've read about them, but I've never actually seen one.
Yeah, I don't know when they went out of business, but this would have been in 67 or 1967 or something like that.
In the 19th century, there were subscription libraries as well.
Yeah. Burrawa, not Barara, says Lucy. Burrawa. We also had one of the commercial libraries in Pennant Hills. Says another. Keith, originally from Edinburgh. I love libraries. I was a regular in Edinburgh's Scotland's library and fell in love with my now wife. We now take our kids as often as possible and bore them with the tales of how we met. So there you go, libraries. This is the two things coming together. Love Libraries Day and Valentine's Day. For them, it's the same. It's the same story, really, in the same place. Isn't that nice? John, happy Libraries Day for tomorrow.
Thank you. Love your libraries, and your libraries will love you back.
No need for a card. Just read a book.
That's right.
Thanks so much. There's John Valance, the State Librarian, ahead of Love Libraries Day tomorrow. It is 7 minutes to 4 here on ABC. ABC Radio Sydney. We'll quickly check the traffic, and then Tommy Dean will be here.
ABC Radio Sydney traffic.
Mascot, Botany Road approaching Wentworth Avenue. A van breakdown there. Moderate traffic conditions northbound. The problem is in lane 3. At Monterey, the Grand Parade at President Avenue. A bus breakdown. One of 3 northbound lanes closed. That's lane 2. And at Carlingford, Pennant Hills Road at Carlingford Road. A car crash there. Southbound traffic affected. Eastern Creek, the M7 motorway at Wargrove Road. A car breakdown there. One southbound lane is closed. And at Little Hartley, Great Western Highway on Victoria Pass, the breakdown of a B-double with one eastbound lane closed. That's the latest here on Drive.
You're with Richard Glover on ABC Radio Sydney.
And Tommy Dean is with us. Not only, thank God, it's Friday star, but NFL fan. Hi, Tommy.
And I also love libraries.
No, I'm sure. But you wouldn't take a day off work in order to visit a library, but you've done that to watch the Super Bowl.
Yes, I have. Why? It's a national public holiday in America, and it's the one time that I feel my red, white, and blue running strong.
Yeah, just selective American one day a year. So what did you make of it? Philadelphia Eagles, of course, were defeated by the Kansas City Chiefs, but right at the last minute, a field goal,
right in the last minute. The whole game was a seesaw affair. It was one of the most high-scoring offensive games ever in the history of the Super Bowl. It was great fun the entire time. And then, yes, and just a couple of key mistakes by Philadelphia coming down the stretch. The pressure told. little snap happened, and then the next thing you know, Kansas City has stuck its nose in front and kept it there.
Okay, we just want to know.
It was very exciting.
We want to know how our Aussie boys went. We had two of them in the Philadelphia team.
That's right. The Bankstown boy, the big offensive lineman, number 68, he had a great game. In fact, I think it was only once in the entirety of the game that the Kansas City defense managed to get to the quarterback, so they protected him very well all day and also blocked very well as Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, set a record for most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in a Super Bowl with 2 plus a conversion, so he was very good. The punter, I think, has had a better day.
This is Aaron Sipos, I think he's called.
Yes, he had a punt late in the fourth quarter that got returned all the way to the 3-yard line, so that was not his finest moment. He tried to make a tackle, which most punters don't do, so he looked tough getting knocked over out of the way so the Kansas City guy could run all the way up to the goal line. But it was a little disappointing, I think, from his point of view.
Okay, but he's probably paid $1 million a minute, so we won't cry too much. Now, the other part of this, of course, is the halftime entertainment. And not only does Rihanna sing brilliantly, but she drops a little, gossip bombshell.
Gossip bombshells, and not just a bomb, truly floated in. Everything suspended in the air. It was so high flying, there was concern that Joe Biden would order her shot down.
Unidentified.
It was so good. It was crazy fun. I've never seen such a up there, but maybe Katy Perry. She did a lot of high flying stuff a while back, but this was a crazy good halftime show. I'm no giant fan of that style of music, but I sure love spectacle, and they turned it on.
Yeah. And she also disclosed that she's pregnant. So, that's a little, that's a little, thing for the millions of people who are watching.
But I don't think it was a big secret. It almost felt like it would have been cool had she actually done it. Wouldn't that have been a Super Bowl record?
I think so. That would have
given birth at halftime.
I think so. At halftime. It's just a matter of timing. Now, what about the ads? Because the other thing that's famous about the Super Bowl, I mean, everyone hates ads usually, but they pay so much to be featured, they put a lot of effort into them, right?
But Australia misses out. I think, I've seen some of them in pre-play, and they spend millions and millions of dollars for their 1 minute of airtime during Super Bowl Sunday, and I've seen some of them. They're always very good. It just reminds you that if you have unlimited money, the fun you can have. Probably the best one that I saw is they brought back Walter White and Jesse from Breaking Bad. And now they're apparently making corn chips, which are just as addictive as meth. So that's good.
And the other part of the story I must ask about is there were two, because I heard this discussed a little earlier in Sarah McDonald's show. There are two brothers, one on either side.
That's right, the Kelce brothers. Travis Kelce, of course, is the very famous tight end. He's an offensive sort of receiving and just one of the monsters of the game. He plays for Kansas City, in fact, scored a touchdown today. And his brother is an offensive lineman, plays next to the Aussie fella. And they take their job is to protect the quarterback of Philadelphia. And it was pretty beautiful. In fact, there was actually a petition started to get their mother to flip the coin to start the game, because who could be more unbiased than a mother with two sons on either side of the battlefield.
And she was wearing a jersey which mentioned both teams, right?
Yeah, she had a jacket sewn together, half Philadelphia, half Kansas City, and her shoes the same. She had on one Kansas City shoe and one Philadelphia shoe. And, both those teams get bonuses for playing in the Super Bowl, win or loss. So I would also assume that her Christmas present will be excellent.
Will be excellent. That's right, with two lads in the game. And I suppose that, it's partly a story of the quarterbacks, isn't it? But both of them are pretty famous, aren't they?
Oh, both very good. Oh, these were both very good. Eagles had one of the best seasons they've had in a long time. They will be very disappointed they didn't convert. But by the same token, Andy Reid, as the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, is one of the storied coaches. He's, one of the first ever coaches to win multiple Super Bowls, after being in the league for 20 years. They're both excellent teams. Both would have been worthy winners. The game played evenly the entire time. It only took two tiny mistakes to switch the momentum, and it could have gone either way. It was just everything you want if you don't care about either team. It was
and if
just a really fun game.
If your only point of interest is Jordan Mailata, know that he did very well.
He did very well. And then just quietly, from my own personal point of view, the game was played in Glendale, Arizona, at the home of the Arizona Cardinals, and I was just it couldn't be more proud of Glendale, looking all flat and brown and deeply unphotogenic. It was so exciting. It was like being back home.
See you on Friday. There's Tommy Dean bringing us up to news time on ABC Radio Sydney. It's 4:00.
Good afternoon, Adam Story with ABC News. The Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says Closing the Gap implementation measures will be developed in partnership with Indigenous communities and not simply imposed on them. Marking 15 years since the then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd made an apology to the stolen generations, the federal government has today announced $424 million in new funding to address Indigenous disadvantage. Mr Albanese has told Parliament the plan will deliver tangible results.
It is a concrete demonstration of how we will advance real-world solutions that improve the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
Refugees have spoken of their relief at the federal government's decision to end the use of temporary protection visas and allow them to stay permanently in Australia. It affects around 19,000 refugees who arrived by boat before Operation Sovereign Borders started in 2013. They will now be able to apply for a resolution of status visa. Hazraman Zaki Harohai has been waiting for his since he fled the Taliban in Afghanistan in 2012.
I'm in disbelief that this announcement came through and I can call Australia a permanent home. Yeah, I'm very emotional and I haven't really had really good time to sort of process the news. Yeah, it's unreal.
A toxic dust cloud has forced the evacuation of a factory on the Central Coast. Fire and Rescue New South Wales says the dust escaped from a blast furnace waste containment bin at a factory at Wyong just after 12:30, forcing 50 workers out of the area. The dust has now contaminated large areas of the factory and a number of vehicles. A string of psychologists and psychiatrists have reanalysed diary entries written by Kathleen Folbig as part of a second inquiry into her convictions for killing her 4 children in the Hunter. Prosecutors previously characterised Folbig's diary entries about struggling with motherhood as an admission of guilt. But today the inquiry was told several experts believe they were a coping mechanism by a grieving mother. Outside the hearing, Kathleen Folbig's friend Tracy Chapman said the development was very important.
For Kath, it was very emotional to hear that this morning because that's consistent with, innocence, and that's what we've always said.
The state opposition has denied its plan to abolish the public sector wage cap would create a black hole in the budget. The government says Treasury analysis shows Labor policy would cost more than $8 billion over 4 years. Public service workers currently receive an overall 3% annual wage increase. Opposition leader Chris Minns says public sector employees deserve to be paid a fairer wage.
This is really about rebuilding human capital in the state, and so much of the services that the people of this state rely on can't be done by a machine or a computer, and it can't be done with raw infrastructure. We need the best and brightest to enter the New South Wales public service.
The Human Rights Commission is calling for a dedicated federal minister for children in order to elevate child well-being into an urgent policy priority. It comes in the wake of pandemic lockdowns and school closures, which have led to a range of issues impacting children, including mental health and school attendance rates. Currently, the government's ministry list includes a Minister for Youth, but the Children's Commissioner, Anne Holland, says that's not specific enough.
The reason we have specific titles like this in ministries is to ensure that there is someone responsible for the coordination of policy effort for them. And what we find, the reality is that children's policy is scattered across a lot of different portfolios.
In sport, the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes has led his team to the Super Bowl trophy after a 38-35 victory over the Philadelphia Eagles in Arizona. Mahomes entered the game with an ankle complaint and re-injured it in the first half, but returned to the game and helped turn around a 10-point deficit. The 27-year-old has told Fox Sports he wasn't concerned about the ankle.
I told y'all this week there's nothing that's going to keep me off that football field, and I just want to shout out my teammates, man. We challenged each other. It took everybody to win this football game. So shout out my teammates, baby. We're Super Bowl champs, baby. Let's go.
And American golfer Scotty Scheffler has regained the world number one ranking after winning the US PGA Phoenix Open by 2 strokes. The defending champion carded a low round 65 to finish the tournament at 19 under par, overtaking Rory McIlroy as the world's best male player. Canada's Nick Taylor finished in outright second. Jason Day was the best of the Australians after a round of 68 to finish 7 shots off the lead in outright fifth. A shower or two and possible afternoon thunderstorm about the ranges and coast, mainly in the northeast. It'll be fine and mostly sunny in the west. Cloudy with a chance of showers in Sydney later tonight. Cloudy tomorrow with a high chance of showers, a top of 25, and then partly cloudy with a slight chance of showers on Wednesday. ABC News at 4:05.
Listening to Drive with Richard Glover on ABC Radio Sydney.
G'day, Rich Glover with you on ABC Radio Sydney. Hope you're well. Today, 20 years in prison, but experts are lining up today to say she's been unfairly found guilty. The Kathleen Folbig inquiry. Here's a new line of evidence. Also today, the health push focused on chronic disease and the Monday Political Forum with Zali Steggall, Susan Templeman and Catherine Greiner. It's all ahead here on ABC Radio Sydney. On radio at 7:02 a.m, on the ABC Listen app, on digital radio, on TV's Channel 25, and of course, online everywhere. Talking about libraries, just a few final comments about the library that meant something to you. From Kerry in Paddington, when I was in primary school, I was an avid reader, was the oldest kid in our group of neighbourhood children. We had a big playroom under our house, and I had all my books on a bookshelf, all with a price on them, generally around 5 cents. And the neighbours' children could borrow my books for this small fee. So that's from Kerry in Padda, running her own library. Good stuff. Phil says one of my favourite ever movie scenes is Wim Wenders' film Wings of Desire, when you see the ceiling of a grand room and then can hear these whispering voices. Slowly the camera pans down and it's people's thoughts heard by angels listening to them in a library. It's magical. That's from Phil. From someone else, a fortnightly outing in the 1970s at St Pat's Primary School in Griffith would be to take the 1 hour walk to the public library. There we would sit 1 hour. Teacher read to us book after book, and then we would spend time choosing books of our own before making the 1 hour walk back. It was the highlight of my fortnight. There you go, an hour there in the hot sun, an hour back, but the glory of the hour in between. Although this, for the other side of the argument, I would much rather live my own life than sit around reading about other people's lives. Get a life, says our listener, with many exclamation marks. So he or she is good at writing, if not at reading. It is 4:07. Richard Glover with you on ABC Radio Sydney. I wonder if you're someone who now watches a lot of your TV shows and movies with subtitles. Despite not being hearing impaired, you might have used English subtitles in the past to understand difficult English dialects. Like the Baltimore Street gangsters from the TV show The Wire. Were you one of those people who, when you're watching The Wire, which is supposedly in English, needed to pop on the subtitles?
Yeah, man. Man said if you want to shoot nails, this is the Cadillac, man. He mean Lexus, but he ain't know it.
Oh, the charge better?
Man, for charge, this is gunpowder activated, 27 caliber, full auto, no kickback, nail throwing mayhem, man. Right here is tight. Well, just nailing up boys, we can kill a couple more right here.
From The Wire. Quick, put on the subtitles. Maybe you've been watching Happy Valley with all the Yorkshire accents, aren't they? That are Northern English accents anyway, and maybe you've decided to put on the subtitles. It does seem as if more and more people are watching English language television with the English language subtitles on. Are you one of those people? How come you're doing it? Is it because, and there's various theories on this. I mean, one theory is that actors these days are not it's not the classically trained tradition of the past. They love mumbling. They often think that mumbling gives a character more authenticity, and so they don't speak with the sort of precision that they might have spoken with in the past. That's one theory. Another theory is, the shows love using regional accents, and sometimes they're so thick you can't understand them. But a third theory is all about the way that sound is compressed on television and the way the music sometimes seems really high up in the mix for reasons that are unclear. Maybe it's been made for the cinema and the device you've got at home hasn't got the same mix, and so you just can't hear the dialogue over the loud music. I don't know if you've had this experience. Do you find it annoying to watch television with the subtitles on? Do you find it helpful? I talked to one person today who said, I hate it. This guy loves watching comedies. And he says the trouble is you sometimes you find yourself reading the joke line before the joke is delivered, and it ruins the whole thing because the timing is out. What about you? Are you doing this? Do your partner do it and you hate it, or vice versa? 1300 222 702 1300 222 702. Ben Byrne is Senior Lecturer in Digital Media at RMIT, and he joins us on the line. Ben, good afternoon.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for having me.
There are kind of a million reasons why people are doing this. I think you think one of the main things is about the sound quality. The mix is different sometimes on the devices we're watching these shows.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a few possible reasons for people using subtitles in languages they understand. The ones you mentioned, certainly this kind of disjunct, I would call it, between the way sound is recorded and mixed for audiovisual media and then the way we actually watch and listen to things now. Along with that, shifting use of sound and connected to what you're talking about with actors' performances, that directors are perhaps trying to draw different things out in what's being communicated by the actors, because that's now possible with the technology. And also a changing culture, perhaps, because people are watching things on their phones, on public transport, wherever, and perhaps use subtitles there when they don't have headphones. They just want to watch silently, and that's bleeding over. In terms of the production process, the key thing is that a lot of films, in particular, big budget films, are still mixed for the cinema. They're still mixed for a situation where you have lots of speakers and a really good listening environment. And of course, when we watch and listen to things at home or out and about, we don't tend to have that.
Mm-hmm. Why, in this modern technological world, why can't they either remix the film for television, or can't there be something in the TV set which understands that it's being screened on a TV set? And so, because I always find the music's too loud. The music's, hellishly loud, as if I'm in a huge cinema, and the dialogue seems to be relatively low.
Well, they can and they do remix it. I mean, of course, there's the issue of funding and different productions. And along with that, the key one is, of course, there are so many different sorts of TVs out there. There are so many people watching things on laptops or on mobile devices. And then there's the question of what sort of speaker setup do people have? Are they perhaps even using headphones, or, more likely they have some sort of speaker setup at home, or they're using the speakers in the TV? All of those things will present the sound differently. And then the latter part of what you were describing, it really relates to what we call dynamic range, the difference between the quieter sounds and the louder sounds. And being able to work with that can be a really powerful thing for creating really affective experiences. Having someone speaking or even quite quiet incidental sound in the space, and then having really loud action scenes particularly, but also sometimes music. And so that difference in volume, essentially, that people often find really frustrating, and I'm the same with that at home, can be something that's really done deliberately to create impact.
Yeah, it might be great in a big cinema, but as you say, an unhappy experience at home. Ben Byrne is with us from RMIT. We're talking about what seems like an increasing use of subtitles when you're watching English language programs. Do you do it for the accent? Do you do? One thing Ben had mentioned that I didn't think of is that a lot of people are watching these shows in noisy environments. So they might be at the airport where, I used to just conventionally sit and read the newspaper or something like that, but instead people are watching a movie, but it's a noisy environment, so they're using the subtitles instead. Or is it something to do with just this, the way that the dynamic range and all of that? 1300 222 702. Do you like it or do you hate it? Do you think it ruins the timing, or does it just add to the whole experience? Antoinette, good afternoon to you.
Hi there.
Yeah, you're doing this?
I've only just started. This is the first time I've done it on an English language TV program. But for Happy Valley, I just binged the two series, the first two.
Yeah.
I started watching it and I thought, I'm missing out.
Yeah.
I can't understand this accent. And I'm disappointed in myself for turning on the subtitle, but it made a big difference.
Well, it is quite a thick. I can't do it. I should be able to do it because my father was from the neighbouring thing, but it's a very thick accent, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And they've got a really lovely way of speaking.
Yeah.
And I was missing out on the plot.
You need the words. 1300 222 702. Ben, do you do it, or do you find, like my friend who thinks it ruins the timing of the jokes? Do you hate it? Are you an aficionado or not, Ben?
I may well start doing it after having this conversation. I haven't in the past. I often watch things in other languages and use the subtitles. But I am very focused on the audio setup I have at home, so it may be that it's a bit less of an issue for me than it is for others.
Okay, so if you're technically clever about these things, unlike me, for instance, you can probably get into your television and change the dynamic range in a way that makes it less of a problem.
Yeah, there's a few different things you can do. Most televisions don't offer a lot of settings like that. They tend to have settings, that you can have stereo sound or 5.1 or other surround sound. They don't tend to let you get into that nitty-gritty. You can, of course, attach other things to kind of process the sound, which I do a bit of. But the main thing that people can do is be deliberate about their choice of speaker setup and think about what they want. Do they want that surround experience? Do they want big, loud sound? Do they really enjoy all the music and the action? Or do they just want clarity of dialogue? And, probably people, of course, want a balance between these things. But having dedicated speakers for your TV setup, for your viewing setup, can make a big difference. And then even more so thinking about exactly, what you really want.
All right. And so, give it a bit of thought and maybe you'll be freed from the perpetual subtitles, except for Happy Valley and maybe The Wire. Hey, Ben, thanks so much for talking to me.
Pleasure.
Yeah, there's Ben Byrne from RMIT. Do you do this? Why do you think you're doing it? Is it because of a technological thing, or do you think it is just because of the modern style of acting and the love for regional accents? One of my this is on the text. I need subtitles at the cinema too, says David. Missed half the dialogue of Tenet. It was hard enough to follow as it was. This is from Gary, I hate how actors or directors think it's cool to whisper their lines these days. Apparently gives their performance gravitas, but I can't understand them. I found myself in a conversation that included Sam Neill recently and made this complaint to him. Oh, God, that's good. His response, try acting opposite them. I can't understand a word they say, he said. He's funny, isn't he? There you go. He said it makes it bloody hard to hit your lines, said Sam Neill to Gary, according to Gary. And you need this is a bit more technical advice. You need an audio device that can decode 5.1 or 5:1 surround sound, as this has a dedicated channel for the dialogue. That's what we need. Turn up the dialogue. 1300 222 702. Jill is here. Hi, Jill.
Hello, Richard.
Are you on the subtitles?
Yes. Well, the thing is that most of us do not have an older relative who speaks with a British accent anymore. We're 5 or 6 generations removed.
That's right. So we don't know these beautiful Yorkshire accents.
No idea at all. Do not understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have watched, what was the show, something Pet?
Auf Wiedersehen, Pet.
Yes, that one.
That was Liverpool, wasn't it?
I couldn't understand a word of it.
No, well, that's a beautiful accent, though, the Liverpool accent. Come on, lovely. But put the subtitle.
That's the reason. That's the reason. We don't understand it anymore.
We might have once when everyone many Australians had a British relative, but not so anymore. Says Jill, 1300 222 702. Thanks for the topic. I use subtitles all the time now, says it as a texter, as I can't understand them. The best thing about the subtitles is when a character is off screen or two characters are talking at once. They give you the character names. It's excellent for understanding convoluted plots. I love the way they describe the music, don't they? Ominous music or bright, happy music or something like that. It's quite... He chuckled rather than he laughed. They're sometimes quite specific about the what's going on in screen. We started with White Lotus and are now using it constantly. We can't understand why. Big, supposedly latest TVs and quiet rooms, but we can't understand. What about you? I think you have to use any subtitles with any film that has Casey Affleck in it because he's just impossible to comprehend, says one of our texters. But another says, I have a soundbar that has a conversion, has a has a conversation setting, so it's supposed to highlight the words, because I can't hear the dialogue generally on anything else. So yeah, have a look at your set. Maybe it's got a conversation setting that pumps up the dialogue a little bit rather than the music. Richard, I found the sound can be rather muffled in certain sections of movies when we're watching on DVD, e.g. the Elvis movie. I had to keep turning the volume up to hear the dialogue and then down again because some of the other scenes were so loud. I ended up using the subtitles to follow the dialogue. I find this is happening more frequently. It's very annoying having to do it. That's from Helen. So we want the sound mixers to call in. There must be sound professionals who are listening to this. What's the solution? Are they all being made for cinema in a way that doesn't translate to the devices that we're actually using? 1300 222 702 is the number. 25 degrees in the city, 24 in Camden, 23 in Gosford, 19 in Mount Boyce, 25 in Penrith and 23 in Cronulla. If you want to call us, 1300 222 702 is the number. Peter's here from Gosford. Hi, Peter.
Yes, hi. I was just listening to that. I've been using it all the time.
You're in the Subtitle Club too, are you?
Absolutely. I actually fix sound systems, and too, the biggest thing we do with sound systems is turn off the multi-channel 7.1s and 5.1s and make it stereo on your settings on your fantastic hi-fi system, and all the speakers then have audio on it, not just the centre speaker.
Right. Okay. So there can be a technological fix to some of this.
I wouldn't call it a fix. I hate it when they have those nice, soft voices talking, and then there's an organ playing in the background at full throttle.
I know exactly what you mean.
And then someone will give them an award for the best sound.
Yeah. Good on you.
It amazes me.
Whack on
sound bars have some good things because some of them have detachable speakers that are battery powered, and you can put them alongside your head. So there's a lot of options there, but the basic problem is that the music is too loud, the voices are too soft, and it's been mixed incorrectly at the studio. And then I don't know if they have a separate thing for TVs, and they could actually make it easier. But that thing about the dynamic range, like the ads always seem louder. It's not so much they're louder, this is more music, it's denser. The density of the music there.
Yeah, it's annoying though because it feels loud and then it feels soft. Hey Peter, thanks so much. Alfida Sam Pet, I said it was from Liverpool accent. It's Novocastrian, so yeah, wrong town there. Alfida Sam Pet, Newcastle accent, according to quite a few people. What else? My husband and I turn the subtitles on for TV shows and movies that have an intricate plot. They tend to drop names that you'll never hear again, and if you don't catch what it is, you'll miss the entire plot. You'll miss the entire plot. That's from Mark and Anna. So what about you? 1300 222 702. I watched Top Gun last night, says one of our texters. Had to have the subtitles as the sound for everything else was so loud that when I had it at an acceptable level, I could not hear them speak. Well, I guess that's right. So Top Gun, you want the roar of the jet, don't you? And the roar of the everything. And then can you hear the dialogue? It's 22 minutes past 4 here on Drive. Coming up, Ian Verinder with the Day in Finance. I wonder if you heard this apology from Peter Dutton. I mean, good on him, I think. It takes a bit to admit you've got something wrong. In his case, he's said, I shouldn't have boycotted that apology in 2008. It's, the 15th anniversary of Mr. Rudd's apology to Indigenous Australians. Peter Dutton boycotted it at the time. He's now stepped up to the microphone in the House of Reps to apologise. He said, I want to speak directly to those in the gallery today and further afield who are part of the stolen generation and those who are descendants or connected to this issue. I want to say in an unscripted way, I apologise for my actions. The Prime Minister is frequently able to point it out that I didn't attend the chamber for the apology 15 years ago. I've apologised for that in the past, and I repeat that apology today. I mean, I think good on him. It does take I wonder if you think about this, whether you can admit, at least to yourself, maybe do it on the radio if you want, but is there something about which you reckon you got it wrong at the time? I mean, did you, support the Vietnam War for a time and then think, that was a mistake? Did you hate the GST and then once it was brought in and you saw it was actually generating a bit of income for social services, did you think, maybe old Howard wasn't so mad after all? Did you oppose a new shopping centre in your area? and then get to like it. I often think about, because I drive past it every day, I think about that big Broadway shopping centre and how when they first built it, there were big protests around. Everyone was protesting. Half of Glebe were out, oh, don't build a shopping centre. What a stupid idea. You go in there and they're all sitting in the cinema, loving it. Can't get enough of it. So, I mean, did you protest about something and then think, oh, actually, no, it's not so bad. I'm glad they went ahead and did that. So what's the thing? If Mr. Dutton can say he got it wrong on the apology 15 years ago, what did you get wrong in your life in kind of political terms or social terms? 1300 222 702 on the text 0467 922 702, the day in finance. Ian Verinder is here. I suppose the Reserve Bank governor may ring up. I've got an example for you, Richard.
Yes.
I wish I hadn't said that thing about interest rates.
Yeah, well, at least 2024.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Now, market's down a little today.
They are. They're off today about a fifth of percent, 0.2%. And look, we've opened down, but last week was actually the worst week since September last year. We lost about 1.7% last week. So, the gloss is starting to come off the market a little bit, and there are concerns, I guess, about can the earnings momentum be maintained and maintained enough to justify the huge run-up that we've had really since Christmas. And the thinking is, well, maybe not, but the biggest loser today was, talking about winners and losers, Star Casino, because down 20% today.
Wow, how come? Because they've already been knocked off their perch a few times, haven't they?
They have, but what they did today when they released their results, which were pretty shocking, really, $1 billion loss, was that they announced that they were going to have to write down the value of the casino by up to $1.6 billion as a result of the changes that Matt Keane brought in, the tax changes that Matt Keane brought in a short while ago, December 17th, I think he announced it. And that is going to basically raise an extra $100 million in taxes per year out of the casino. And they're now saying, well, if you're going to raise $100 million worth of taxes per year, that's $100 million less income we've got. So the value of our business is therefore lower.
They've also, along with Crown, have agreed to the cashless card already. That's going to be part of their business.
Yeah. I mean, look, interestingly, though, today they've actually laid the blame on the Bell Review. Now, if you might recall, the Bell Review uncovered huge amounts of corruption, non-compliance with the law, whatever you want to call it, harbouring and doing business with junket operators offshore that were known triad affiliates. So it is a bit rich to be saying, oh, well, everything would be okay if we didn't have that
terrible review where they found the truth. That was very uncomfortable. Now, JB Hi-Fi, even though the shares went down today, their result was better than expected.
Yeah, look, it was a record result for JB Hi-Fi, and it's one of the great, I guess, retail stocks in the country. It's one of the most admired stocks amongst investors and analysts and so forth because it's really built itself up from pretty much nothing, 20 years ago into, quite a company that really everybody admires. It always seems to, shoot it out of the park. And today their result was exceptionally good. Record sales, record results, lift in the dividend. You couldn't ask for any more. What they're saying now, though, is that they're worried that the momentum that they've built up is not being maintained through January. So sales they're still growing. They were still growing in January, but not as much as last year. So the sales growth was about 2.5% in January. Last January, it was 4.5%. So the sales, while still growing, aren't growing as quick.
Okay, but this is what you'd expect, actually, at the moment with the interest rates going up so much. You'd expect it to start to slow.
And that's why everybody's, here's a company that is a really solid performer. And so if it can't maintain the growth momentum that it's had in the past, everyone's thinking, well, what does this mean for the other stocks? JB Hi-Fi also owns Good Guys. They bought that, and that's mainly white goods and so forth. Its sales growth has basically stalled. So, you're looking at, I guess, economists are looking at this and going, well, here's the future for retail sales, for spending and so forth in the economy. So it is an interesting thing to look at. And
it's all those handwritten signs.
Yeah.
Because the place looks so cheap, you think, it must be cheap.
Yeah.
Not necessarily true, of course.
Yeah. But yeah.
You know, we used to shop. Sorry, but we used to, when I was a kid, we used to shop at Franklin's, and my mother used to say, as she pushed this trolley down these incredibly narrow aisles full of boxes of tins of tomatoes, and you had to keep on, and she'd say, "Oh, this is terrible, isn't it? But still, it must be cheap, or they wouldn't run it so badly."
Yeah. Well, it became IGA, of course. Franklin's. Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a Franklin's everywhere. Foursquare. Do you remember Foursquare?
Yeah. But I'm sure the technique was to make it look cheap, because then you'd be convinced it was cheap.
Yeah, a couple of international groups have managed to go down that path, haven't they?
Yeah. Now, the All Ords and the dollar.
So the All Ords today down, and so we're continuing that trend from last week, 7,614, and the dollar just sitting above 69 cents at the moment.
Very good. There's Ian Verender, our ABC business editor.
ABC Radio Sydney Traffic.
And here's Jeff Wallace from the Australian Traffic Network. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Richard. I'm just looking at the cameras, Hoxton Park, the M7, very slow. Looks like it might be a breakdown somewhere in the trees there around Joadja Road, heading down towards the Hume motorway for the M7 southbound. Jermison Town, earlier crash, Mulgoa Road near the M4, and Brighton the Sands, a broken down bus. It's northbound, citybound, the Grand Parade, approaching President Avenue. Menai is coming through a breakdown for Alfords Point Road, south of the Alfords Point Bridge. I'm Jeff Wallace from the Australian Traffic Network.
Jeff, thank you very much. Now, what did you oppose or support